Elon Musk has created the brand new America Party shortly after the Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law due to Elon's issues with the bill regarding its massive government spending after he was able to cut $50 billion for Doge. He feels like the massive spending from the bill is a betrayal to him and his work at the Trump administration, despite many government cuts to different programs being made to offset the costs of the bill's spending. And we're going to be looking at the electoral implications between JD Vance and Pete Buttigieg's basically nominations. And we would be looking at the pretty much electoral implications in a general election. And by the way, guys, these nominees are selected through the polling averages on the racetothewhitehouse.com. So even though Pete is not the favorite in the betting odds, he is currently leading all of the polls without Kamala Harris in the primary. Thus, I give him the nomination. Same thing for JD Vance. He leads all the polling, even with Donald Trump Jr. included. And so when going through the map, right, if you were to do the election with the America Party, which I actually would expect in a given election to probably get about 2 to 3% of the electorate, I think that Elon's money would actually help it start at a 2-3% rate. And I think it would probably split Republican to Democratic voters, maybe 2-1. So it'd take more away from Republicans than Democrats. And when you did that, you'd end up getting a map like this where Pete Buttigieg, despite being a very weak national candidate, would actually narrowly end up winning the national popular vote. He'd narrowly win it by like a point or half a point, and he would narrowly end up winning the Electoral College in a lot of the battleground states. I mean, for the most part, you'd see all of these states go in the safe column, including Nebraska at large, which is still, and actually not even. Nebraska's at large wouldn't even be there. I think Nebraska's first would probably only be like a 6-7 point win. Nebraska second would be like a 10 to 11 point win for Pete Buttigieg. And you clearly even see like Kansas and Iowa are pretty much, likely Republican states. Vance is only winning Kansas by 9 points in this. He's only winning Iowa by 8 points, winning Ohio by 10 points. So we see here, despite even somebody like a Pete Buttigieg being the nominee, which in retrospect is a really bad nominee for the party, given his weakness with Black and Hispanic voters, hence why you don't really see these states shifting as much to the left as some other states are, and I'll show you guys that in a second. Even Arizona actually becomes more Republican than it would, even with Elon's party. Arizona actually shifts to the right from 2024, believe it or not. Nevada is the one that ends up being really close in this case. We even see Colorado, New Mexico, those end up shifting a little bit more Democrat due to the college white vote kind of being stronger for Pete, as well as some Republican siphoning off of votes. Washington 22 point win, Oregon 18. California actually ends up getting a little bit closer than 2024. Again, Pete's strength with Hispanic voters is and Black voters is like absolutely abysmal, to the point where even where he gets this massive advantage with Elon's party, he still would only narrowly eke out a win. But this is the issue. The problem is with this kind of party and them only getting 2 to 3%, you can have somebody like Pete Buttigieg, despite not being very popular, actually win a national general election and improve on Harris in almost all of the states, despite not even getting as many votes as her, period. Like in this third party matchup, she wouldn't even receive as many votes as her and would still end up winning the Electoral College very narrowly against JD Vance. And what you notice is when you look at the shift map with the Elon Musk party included in this, you see the states that actually shift the most to the left are places with a lot of Trump support, like Idaho and Montana and Missouri and Tennessee and Kentucky and Indiana, because that's where the voters of Elon's party would take away. It's in the most Republican places. Meanwhile, again, Pete Buttigieg is a terrible candidate. So even Mississippi actually gets like a point more Republican, and even Maryland and Delaware end up getting a half point each more Republican because of how bad Pete Buttigieg is with the Black vote. overall. And like Arizona and California still shift Republican. But other than that, most of the other states still shift a few points to the left, 2 to 3 points. Florida only like 2, Texas only 2, some places a little bit more than others. But you get the point. The third party would inevitably do major damage to the Republican base and would help somebody like Pete Buttigieg get elected to the presidency. And if you even look at the county map here, I mean, Duval is a little bit more Republican than before, but Georgia ends up flipping back. Miami-Dade, is a little bit closer. Osceola flips back. Some of the Democratic counties in the southern border in Texas get a little bit stronger. Terrence closer to an extent. You see in Wisconsin, like the state overall, like the rural counties on the western side get more Democrat. Even Greene County flips back. Sauk is really close. We see like, Winnebago is like half a point Republican. Racine and Kenosha are almost flipping Democrat. Ozaukee is only a 7-point win for Vance. And even like Macomb would be a 10-point win. Like there'd be really bad repercussions for this. There would be really bad electoral repercussions for Elon creating this third party and actually running like a presidential candidate. This would not be great. Maricopa would stay about the same, but you clearly see there are some votes, that either don't turn out or they're being taken away. Washoe County, Clark County ends up voting a little bit more left. So does Washoe. Imperial flips back as well, to the Democrats. So despite Pete Buttigieg being a horrible general election candidate, he still would end up basically winning the general election because a party with 3% of the vote is taking away a lot of Republicans. But if you had the election without the third party, Vance would actually win the 2028 election quite convincingly, to the point where Texas is no longer likely. Neither is Kansas, Iowa, Ohio, neither is Florida, neither is Alaska. Those all end up being over 12 points. Nebraska is a 15-point win, so you'd end up having, just this kind of margin there. And then obviously all of the swing states, I can kind of, get rid of the ratings for a lot of these. We would clearly see, different shifts in the electorate. For example, New York and Connecticut and Delaware would be a lot closer. And this is with only like regular third party turnout. This is like a half point. So with the Elon third party, the Republicans are getting 74 million votes. The Democrats are getting 75 million, or the Republicans 73 to 75 million for the Democrats. Here, the Republicans are getting 80 million, 81 million to 75, 76 million for the Democrats. And that ends up creating a disaster for them electorally. So looking at the map here, Colorado ends up getting closer. Illinois is only a 7-point win. New York's only an 8-point win, given, Pete's really bad weaknesses amongst those voters. We see New Hampshire and Maine, still kind of be in their columns respectively, but obviously they're closer than the 2024 counterpart. New Jersey, Virginia, and Minnesota are all lean in this one still. But Virginia's like a half a point closer. New Jersey's 2 points closer. Minnesota, does move a little bit to the left, and so does Iowa. But Wisconsin and Michigan actually, Michigan actually moves left by like 0.3%, while Wisconsin moves like 0.2% or 0.67% to the right. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, they all move Republican by a tiny bit there. So that ends up shifting the races there. And even like New Mexico would only be a 4-point win for Pete. Like it'd be way closer. We even see Arizona and Nevada being way bigger margins. Arizona being a 10-point win for Vance and Nevada being a 5-point win for Vance, which would give Vance 312 electoral votes and would possibly even help him flip New Hampshire in his column, depending on how Pete does on election night. But, clearly Vance would have a much easier time winning the election compared to having that third party in the mix. And you clearly see, like, look at Florida. There's 200,000 third party votes there. If you were to add those, you see now the total's way smaller. And yes, Pete does actually Pete actually does worse without the third party included, believe it or not. And you clearly see those 200,000 votes kind of flip over to Vance to a degree. Even in like Texas, to an extent, you clearly see 5.5 million for Vance. Here, the Democrats are getting 4.2 million, but the Republicans are now getting 5.9 million. And even in Arizona, to a degree, you see a similar thing. The Republicans gain a couple thousand votes, but then the Democrats end up losing a lot of them because they just don't turn out to vote. Nevada, it's a similar story. They're both at 600,000. It's really close. But then when you add some of those voters to the Republican total, the margin expands quite significantly. The same thing in Wisconsin. The Democrats have 1.9 million, Republicans 1.8 million. Here, the Republicans are at 1.9, Democrats at 1.8. Michigan, both at 3.1 million. Again, you clearly see the Democrats at 3.2 million to Republicans 2.9. When you add the third-party votes back, plus some Democrat erosion, you end up getting a narrow win there. Pennsylvania, it's the exact same thing as well. So, clearly the third party is doing major damage here. Even though it's just 200,000 votes there and a couple 100,000 votes here, it's still doing major damage to the Republican Party across the spectrum here. And of course, the states that it takes away the most are some of these, red states. And you clearly see that vote total is really eating up the margin in the state. Just a few thousand votes in Oklahoma or Kansas can really make a difference in the margin. So that is really what I wanted to show to you guys. And again, polling even confirms that with Musk's party, it would be about a tie. And this is literally a D+1 national environment. So it's basically about what the polling says, give or take. And this is a 3.5-point win for Vance in the national popular vote here, give or take. So it's really interesting to see how much Elon Musk's party at a national level would actually affect Republicans. And this is just kind of my preliminary forecast for that. And so if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video. And if you want, share this video on Elon Musk's X page, post this, because it's really going to be a problem for Democrats, well, for Republicans, if Elon really goes forward with this party.